All right, let's jump right into our deep dive this week. We're going to be talking about the hunt for Osama bin Laden. We've got Chris Wallace's book, Countdown Bin Laden.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
It is. It's a really good read. We're going beyond just the typical headlines and, kind of like the basic facts of the story. And we're going to try to like uncover some of the more intricate details of the story.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Wallace brings you, I mean, you really feel like you're in the Situation Room. You're in those rooms with the CIA director, with the president, and
Absolutely.
you see like all the human drama unfolding.
The book starts with a tip about this compound in Abbottabad. It was super mysterious, very
A
secretive.
fortress, really.
Yeah, yeah, totally a fortress. The CIA, they were already tracking this courier, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti,
Uh,
and they believed that he was close to bin Laden.
it's just amazing to think about. I mean, this is the world's most wanted man. No cell phones, no emails. He was that paranoid, even years after 9/11.
Yeah, that's wild. So the CIA, they knew they couldn't just like storm the compound.
Right.
They needed to be absolutely certain that bin Laden was there.
Right. That's where the pacer comes into the picture.
Yeah, who was this guy?
Well, that was the question, right? They could just see this shadowy figure pacing around the compound's courtyard.
Yeah.
They could never really identify
Is
him.
it another layer of mystery?
Totally, yeah. The intelligence community, they were agonizing over this. Was this bin Laden? Or was this just, another one of his security measures?
Yeah, I can't even imagine the pressure. So while the CIA is trying to figure out who the pacer is, let's talk about the people leading the hunt. Wallace, he does such a good job of bringing these people to life. Like Leon Panetta, the CIA director, he was obsessed with catching bin Laden.
Oh, yeah. And you get that sense from this detail about him, this $10,000 wine bet.
Yeah, the wine bet.
I mean, that wasn't just, some quirky detail. It showed you that this guy was under immense pressure. He wanted this breakthrough so badly. It was personal.
Is personal, definitely. And then you have his deputy, Michael Morrell. He had been tracking bin Laden since before 9/11.
Yeah, it's like he represents this, institutional memory of the CIA.
Right.
All those years of frustration. Almost catching him.
Great.
It wasn't just a job, it was unfinished business.
Yeah. And then there are the SEALs, specifically Robert O'Neill and Will Chesney. Wallace gives us this glimpse into their lives.
It really humanizes the whole story.
It does. Their fears, their courage, just extraordinary.
Like when O'Neill calls his father before the raid, just heart-wrenching. He knows he might not come back.
Yeah,
It just adds this layer of vulnerability to this incredibly high-stakes operation.
yeah. And then there's Chesney's relationship with his military dog, Cairo. It shows the unique bonds that are formed in combat.
Yeah, Cairo wasn't just a tool, he was a companion,
Right.
like a source of comfort when they're facing unimaginable danger.
It's just incredible.
It really makes you think about the human cost of this hunt for bin Laden,
Yeah.
which, it often gets overshadowed by all the politics and strategy talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all this time, the pressure's mounting on Obama and his team. They had to decide what to do about the compound. Do they do a risky special forces raid? A drone strike? What about an airstrike?
Right. Each option, it had huge risks and consequences.
Uh-huh.
An airstrike, it could cause a lot of civilian casualties.
Right.
A drone strike might not even confirm if bin Laden's dead.
Yeah.
And then a special forces raid, I mean. Yeah, it offered the best chance of capturing bin Laden alive, but it was the riskiest option for American lives.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think a lot of people were thinking about Operation Eagle Claw, that failed 1980 hostage rescue mission in Iran.
Yeah, it was a reminder that even the best planned missions, especially in a volatile region like Pakistan,
Yeah,
things can go very wrong.
totally. And to make things even more difficult, the intelligence community wasn't even 100% sure bin Laden was in the compound.
Yeah, some analysts were totally convinced, others were urging caution. Imagine being Obama, having to weigh all of that, knowing that the lives of American soldiers, maybe even innocent civilians, it all depended on his decision.
An agonizing decision. But ultimately, he chose the riskiest option, the Special Forces raid. He put his faith in the SEALs, their ability to pull off what seemed like an impossible mission.
Yeah, and with that decision made, the clock starts ticking. Wallace really takes us inside the planning, the preparation for the raid. So much activity, secrecy, attention to detail.
They had stealth helicopters, nighttime infiltration, SEAL Team 6 training for every scenario. The tension just builds and builds as the day approaches.
And Wallace doesn't let you forget the weight of expectation on everyone involved.
No, he doesn't.
This is where his storytelling really shines, I think. You get enough detail to understand how complex the operation is. but he never gets bogged down in jargon or anything.
Right, right. And he always reminds you that behind all the technology, all the tactics, this is a story about people, driven by patriotism, duty, a desire for justice.
The stakes couldn't have been higher.
Yeah.
And the tension, it's palpable, you know? As we get closer to the raid itself, we're going to delve into those moments, those heart-stopping moments, when we come back.
Okay, so we left off with the SEALs getting ready for this super high-stakes mission.
Yeah, and Wallace's account of the raid itself, man, it's gripping.
Yeah.
You're right there in the thick of it, like alongside the SEALs. Flying into Pakistan in the dark, landing at the compound, clearing each room.
It's intense. Remember that whole thing with the crashed Black Hawk? That could have been a total disaster, right?
Oh, absolutely. That wasn't just like a little hiccup. That could have ended the whole mission right then and there.
Imagine the pressure on Admiral McRaven, the commander of the operation.
I can't even imagine. He had to think on his feet, like instantly, redirecting resources, making sure everything could still go ahead, despite this, massive setback.
Unbelievable. And back in the White House Situation Room, you've got President Obama and his team watching all of this unfold in real time.
Oh man, that tension must have been like off the charts. Every second just dragging on forever, just waiting for updates, hoping for the best, but, also having to prepare for the worst.
Yeah. And then, finally, the news they'd been waiting for. Geronimo Akia.
Enemy killed in action.
It was confirmation bin Laden was dead. But even then, the mission wasn't over, right?
Right.
The SEALs still had to get out of Pakistan.
Yeah, with all that sensitive equipment, bin Laden's body. Talk about a tense extraction.
It must have felt like an eternity.
Oh, yeah. They were down a helicopter. They're in a hostile country.
Right.
Racing against time before, the Pakistani authorities figure out what's happened.
Just incredible that they pulled it off.
It really speaks to their skill, the professionalism of the SEAL team.
Absolutely. So the news of bin Laden's death, it sent shockwaves around the world. Obama addresses the nation, this carefully crafted speech, acknowledging the victory, but also, emphasizing that the fight against terrorism wasn't over.
Yeah, that speech was really interesting, I thought. It was like a master class in leadership.
Yeah.
He avoided, being triumphalist about it.
Yeah.
He focused on the victims of 9/11 and the long road to justice.
Yeah, definitely. But, even though Obama urged restraint, you still had these spontaneous celebrations erupting all across the U.S.
Oh, yeah. People pouring into the streets, waving flags, chanting. I mean, it really shows the complicated emotions tied to bin Laden's death.
Totally.
For a lot of people, it's symbolic, right?
Yeah.
It felt like finally, after all the sacrifice, justice was served.
Definitely. But the raid, it did trigger this diplomatic fallout, especially with Pakistan. I mean, they were furious.
Oh, yeah. Understandably so.
The U.S. had conducted this operation on their soil without their knowledge or consent.
Talk about a breach of trust.
Exactly.
They really exposed that deep mistrust between the U.S. and Pakistan. And it just highlights, how difficult it is to conduct these counterterrorism operations in such a complex geopolitical landscape.
Absolutely. It also raised some uncomfortable questions, like, were elements within Pakistan aware of bin Laden's presence? Were they complicit in hiding him? I mean, the fact that his compound was in Abbottabad, a military town, that fueled a lot of speculation.
Right. It really strained relations between the two countries.
Definitely.
Then there's the whole question of the intelligence they recovered from the compound.
Oh, yeah, that treasure trove of documents, hard drives.
Unprecedented insights into Al-Qaeda, their operations, leadership.
This wasn't just symbolic. This was a major intelligence coup.
Oh, absolutely. Analysts spent months, going over everything, piecing together a picture of bin Laden's role, his strategy, his communication.
Yeah, it really challenged that perception of bin Laden as just a figurehead.
Right. It showed he was still actively involved, directing operations, plotting future attacks.
It's kind of chilling to think about.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even in hiding, he was still a very dangerous enemy. But the aftermath of the raid, it wasn't just about intelligence and diplomacy. It also forced people to confront the human cost of the war on terror.
For those who fought it and those caught in the crossfire?
Wallace does a really good job of exploring this aspect, like the story of Michael Morrell, Panetta's deputy. He missed his daughter's choral performance because he was so consumed by the mission.
Yeah, I remember that detail.
It just shows the personal sacrifices everyone made.
It really does.
It humanizes the whole story. You know? Reminds you that behind all the headlines and the strategy, there are real people making difficult choices, carrying heavy burdens.
Yeah, and there's the story of Jessica Ferenczi, the police officer who lost her fiancé on 9/11.
Jerome Dominguez.
Right.
Her story is a reminder that the wounds of that day run deep, and that the quest for justice, it took many forms.
It really does.
Her determination to honor her fiancé's memory, to not let his sacrifice be forgotten, it adds this whole other layer of complexity to the narrative. It reminds us that the hunt for bin Laden wasn't just about these abstract ideas like justice or security. It was about real people, real lives lost, and the pain of those left behind.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. Those personal stories woven throughout Wallace's account, they really make you think. We've talked about the fallout from the raid, like the strategic stuff and the diplomatic stuff. But what about the personal toll on the people who are actually there? Wallace's book, it really doesn't shy away from that side of the story either.
Yeah, and one of the most striking examples, I think, is Will Chesney, one of the SEALs on the raid team. His story, it really highlights the role of the military working dogs. They're kind of overlooked sometimes.
Yeah, and Chesney's bond with his dog, Cairo, it adds a really interesting layer to the story. Cairo wasn't just, like a tool or a piece of equipment. He was a teammate, right? A confidant, a source of comfort in this crazy, high-pressure, dangerous world.
Yeah, it really shows, like the deep connection between humans and animals, especially in those, super stressful situations. Cairo, he was like a little piece of normalcy, unconditional love amidst all that chaos.
It's pretty amazing. And then you have Robert O'Neill, the SEAL who claims to have fired the shots that killed bin Laden. There's been a lot of controversy around his account. But Wallace, he really gets into the psychological burden of that kind of claim.
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Like, on one hand, you have the SEAL code of silence, operational security. But then on the other hand, this guy played such a huge role in this historical event. It's understandable that he might want to talk about it,
Mhm.
to process it all.
Yeah, I get that. And it wasn't just O'Neill. A lot of the SEALs who were there, they struggled with the aftermath, going from total anonymity to notoriety,
Yeah.
dealing with the weight of what they did, the secrecy.
It really makes you think about how we support our veterans,
Mm.
when they come home. How we help them deal with the things you can't see.
Definitely. And we tend to focus a lot on the SEALs who are actually on the raid. But Wallace also talks about the intelligence analysts who spent years, sometimes decades, tracking bin Laden.
Oh, yeah, the unsung heroes of the story, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they went through mountains of data, connecting the dots, providing the intelligence that made the raid possible. It was painstaking, frustrating work.
It sounds like it.
Absolutely crucial.
For sure. Like Gary, the head of the CIA's Pakistan-Afghanistan department,
Oh, yeah.
he was so obsessed with the mission that he marked off the days leading up to the raid on his office window.
That's dedication.
Yeah, I mean, it shows you how committed these people were. This wasn't just a job, it was like a calling.
Absolutely.
They wanted to protect their country, prevent another 9/11. And then there's Maya, the analyst, who spent years studying bin Laden,
Oh, wow, yeah.
trying to get inside his head, figure out his motivations, his weaknesses. She was one of the main people who convinced everyone that bin Laden was in that compound.
It's amazing how important human intuition is in intelligence work. It's not just about the computers and data. You need to understand psychology, see those patterns that others miss.
Totally.
It's like a mix of science and art.
It really is. And it's important to remember technology is vital, yeah. But it's still people who make sense of all that data, who make the decisions.
Absolutely. And, taking a step back from the individual stories here, there's this bigger question, has the world actually become a safer place since bin Laden's death? It's not an easy question to answer.
No, it's not. It's
Yeah.
tempting to just say yes. Right. Mission accomplished. Bin Laden's gone. Al-Qaeda's weakened. We're all safer.
Right. But the reality is it's more complicated. Al-Qaeda was definitely hurt, but terrorism didn't just vanish.
No, it didn't.
It changed, it spread, took on new forms.
Yeah.
We've seen new groups emerge, like ISIS, extremist ideas spreading online, conflict all over the world.
So the raid, it was a tactical victory, but it didn't address the root causes of terrorism.
The battlefield's different, but the fight goes on.
That's why books like Wallace's are so important. They give us context, depth, insight. They remind us that history is more than just a bunch of events.
It's about people, choices, consequences.
This has been a fascinating deep dive, going way beyond the headlines. We've talked about the planning, the raid itself, the aftermath, the human cost of it all.
The stories of the people who made it happen, those who supported it, and those whose lives were changed forever by 9/11 and everything that followed.
We hope this has been, informative, thought-provoking.
Keep exploring these issues, look for different perspectives, and think critically about the challenges we face.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep exploring.